Welcome back to Grow Your Own Vegetables, where a community of trusted teaching partners helps you grow real food in any space, in every season. What if the soil under your feet, the gravel, the silt, even the seashells at the beach could become the most fertile ground on earth? Most of us buy bags of soil from the garden center. The truth is, the most extraordinary gardens are built from what's already around you, and the secret ingredient is older than agriculture itself. What you're about to watch is a live talk given at one of our past Grow Your Own Vegetables events, recorded for gardeners just like you. Today's teacher is David Wolfe, superfood pioneer with over 25 years of experience and the founder of the Fruit Tree Planting Foundation, joined in conversation by Stacey Murphy, our GYOV teaching partner. Today they're sharing the ancient soil ingredient that grows vegetables almost on its own, the surprising places to find free fertilizer hidden in plain sight, and the chaos gardening approach that turns your yard into a food forest. Pour yourself some tea. Let's spend a little time together.
For more information, free resources, and gentle guidance, you can find us at growyourownvegetables.org. And to grow alongside other gardeners just like you, join our free community at gyov.org. Settle in. You're going to enjoy this.
Well, hello and welcome. Stacey Murphy here, and today I'm with David Wolfe. He is the rock star and Indiana Jones of the superfoods and longevity multiverse. With over 25 years experience and hosting more than 3,000 live health events, David has led the environmental charge for radiant health with a positive mental attitude, as well as eco-community building, living spring water, and the best ever quality organic foods, wild foods, juices, and herbs. Welcome, David.
Thank you so much, Stacey. I'm super excited for this conversation. This is a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and I can't wait to share what I've learned over my life in the area of farming and gardening.
This is so exciting. I'm sure that a lot of people have heard you talk a lot about specific superfoods like avocados and cacao, and now we get to see behind the scenes a little bit into your gardening, which is really exciting. So I guess where I wanted to start was tell us the story of how you discovered the awe of nature.
You know, there's certain things that I believe in reincarnation. I really do. I mean, because the evidence is there. I've read all the books by Max Tucker, Ian Stevenson, other interesting researchers who've studied thousands of unusual cases where children had memories that they couldn't have had. They have information they couldn't have had. And from a very early age, in fact, I never actually told anybody this. Not even my brothers knew this. I was a kind of a renegade pine tree planter in my neighborhood from as early as I can remember. For sure, when I was 5 years old, I was nursing trees and planting them around the neighborhood. That has to be a past life thing or something like that, because no one ever gave me that information. And I couldn't have read books on it. Certainly my parents weren't into it. And that's where it began for me, is just the magic of growth. That's the magic of nature. And so it started with pine trees, interestingly, and pine trees are becoming more and more important now in today's conversation. And definitely, if you have pine trees in your yard, there's great things you can do with them. For example, plant blueberries underneath them, because that's what blueberries like. They like to be with pine trees. There's also great edible mushrooms that grow from pine forests, like chanterelles. So that may be coming up in your yard, things of that nature. So it's really began, I think, just from the beginning, and it just has grown ever since. And I'm a renegade planter still today. And if I didn't have a foundation that planted fruit trees all over the world, I'd have to be doing that myself, because fortunately, I have a really close guy who runs that company for me. It's not a company, it's a charity. And we're like brothers because we have the same exact interests. So, I don't have to be out there renegade planting, although I do renegade plant a lot still.
I would love it if everybody renegade planted a little bit, and then we could cover the globe, right?
Yes, we could cover the earth with that's the thing that I love about planting trees and gardens. You're doing something good for yourself, you're doing something good for the earth, and you're doing something good for the future.
That I love that idea of planting for the future. So one of the reasons why I garden is that I grew up with my mom in her garden, and that wisdom was passed down to me. And so that's why I garden. I'm curious now, what was your first garden like? Tell us the story of when So you started growing trees, which not everybody starts with trees. And then tell us about when you started maybe growing a little bit of food. What did that first garden look like for you?
The very first garden that I had a long period of time experiencing was my uncle's garden at his house in East San Diego. But that's the first place I planted avocado trees and citrus, and we started that in 1978. And so that was 7 years old at that time. And what a wonderful experience. And so we started out with parsley, and we started out with tomatoes and cucumbers and melons and watermelons. And it was just great to see, because I've been a tree planter even as a little kid and even up to that point. And so it was really interesting for me to see, like, oh, whoa, this cucumber is growing in just a couple months instead of 2 years. Because I'm still in the mindset of a tree planter, by the way. That's my default position. And so it's really wonderful when you grow like watermelon and you see at the end of the summer, just boom, 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 it just suddenly becomes like this, went from this to this. And you're like, whoa, what's going on? It reminds me of the Cinderella story. The pumpkin coat shows up, where suddenly it's like this magical thing going on. We're like, how big is this thing going to get?
That's awesome. And so it sounds like you come from a family of growers, which is kind of cool. And gardens evolve over time. And so you've been growing now several decades. So why now do you continue to grow? Are the reasons the same, or have they changed?
That's a great question. I guess it has changed a little bit. More and more, it's about sustainability. So I don't want to have to actually go to a store. I don't actually go to a store. We just get stuff shipped from another farmer of the stuff we don't grow, is kind of more of what ends up happening. So we kind of swap stuff. And it's more about like, how much can I fit into the space? And there's always more you can fit in. It's crazy, actually, like how much you can actually fit in to a small space. I can get in one, like we basically farm in so I have several farms. So on one farm, we basically are farming 2 acres. On another farm, we're farming about 5 acres. And on another farm, we're farming about maybe half an acre. And so that you can't believe what you could easily produce all the food you could ever want in that, and all the trees and everything else. It's just incredible. So that's something I want everyone to know is if you're in a suburb, for example, I've seen incredible suburb farms where people took their lawn, got rid of their lawn. They took, even when you go out to the sidewalk and there's that space between the sidewalk and the street, turned that into tomato plants and cucumber plants and all different kinds of little edibles like celery or kale or things of that nature. And it's crazy what you can actually produce in that small space. So I want everyone to know that no matter how small you think your yard is, or even your back little porch, you can grow a lot.
That's amazing. And what you shared as well about the community, I think helps people think about how to grow more food too. You've got multiple sites, and sometimes we think like we have to do everything ourselves. And it's not really true. We could actually have other people involved, other people's yards involved. What if you got somebody else's yard and you shared produce with them? So I love the idea that not only do you not have to grow everything yourself, but you could share with the community. So once you get outside your own bubble, things even open up even more what's possible. So I love that idea.
I want to add to that idea just real quick. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
But one thing about that is that you're going to find you're good at certain things and not at other things. Like I'm really good at growing trees. I know fruit trees. I can grow fruit trees in my sleep. But when it comes to, I don't know, carrots, I'm okay, but I'm not. There's guys, gals, ladies, families, they do so much better with carrots than me. It's crazy. So I'm not the guy for carrots. They're going to handle it better than I do. So it's just something to remember about yourself. You may have a particular skill, go into that skill, make that your thing.
Yeah. And that's how nature works too. In nature, there's all these specific functions that different things have, and they're all networked together to create this amazing garden. So we are our garden in that sense. It's really cool. So I guess I'm curious, people love to know, especially people who are getting started, they love to learn from mistakes because they don't want to make the same mistakes. So tell us maybe 1 or 2 of your mistakes that you would love that other people never have to make.
When you start out with gardening and you want to get things into pots, for example, one of the big mistakes you can make is that you put too much soil in there and it turns into a clay, or you take too much clay and throw it in there. And so the whole thing gums up and suddenly becomes, because when you have clay in a pot, it's not like clay in the earth. The clay in the earth can still disperse the water out into the remaining soil, but the clay in the pot doesn't disperse very easily. So it starts to retain too much water and you could drown things. And this is why they use vermiculite in potting mixes. That's that little white stuff, looks like little popcorn kind of things in there. Now, I found out something way beyond vermiculite, way easier, way better, way more fun, way more interesting, and it actually does many different jobs at once. And so this is a very important part of this conversation for me, and one of the main things I wanted to share is that one of the main things that I use in farming, it's the bottom layer. It's the bottom. If I dig a hole and put a tree in, it's the bottom thing. If I put a raised bed garden in, it's the bottom thing. If I just put a garden in, I'm going to take that topsoil off, put this at the bottom, put the soil back on, and that is charcoal. And I order charcoal in bulk. It's cut to rice-size pieces. They're little rice-size pieces. You can always create your own charcoal. The charcoal at the edge of your fire pit, you could use that. I've used that for years, of course, but I use so much charcoal that it's easier to get the pros to help me out. So that takes care of my vermiculite in the sense that if I'm using pots, this charcoal opens up enough space so it doesn't get gummed up into a clay and choke out the roots. I mean, that's what happens if you're doing potted plants. You're like, how come everything's dying? It's because the soil can't breathe because you're using a pot, and therefore the clay doesn't disperse and it stays gummed up and it chokes your roots out. So if you use charcoal, it does that job. Another thing charcoal does, it retains water. Another thing that it does, it has very strong negative charge. So it's very good for growth. I've grown vegetables and started vegetables almost in 100% charcoal pots, 100%, nothing else in it. Now I take it out in the garden and eventually it goes into the earth, but I've done experiments where I'm like, it's growing so good in the charcoal, I'll just do it 100% charcoal, and it works. You can grow many, many garden vegetables and at least start them in charcoal only, because of that's the basis of all great soil is charcoal. That's why we have fires on earth. That's why it resets the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's amazing. And tell us a little bit about that. So a lot of people might have heard the term biochar and then the words charcoal. And so are you actually using and some people will say, absolutely do not use charcoal. Are you saying here, charcoal? Okay.
100%. Yeah, I use charcoal. There's nothing like charcoal for farming. It's the most amazing discovery of my life, I think, for sure. I mean, right now at my house, where I'm just farming half acre, I'm having 1,500 pounds of charcoal delivered from Biochar Now. Actually, they're in Colorado. Great company. I recommend them, biocharnow.com. I get big totes, big pallets of charcoal delivered. And the thing about that is that because that's a relatively new site for me and I'm farming in areas that have never had charcoal yet, that the charcoal persists. It's not like every year you need to get more charcoal in. No, it's not like that at all. It's like it persists in the soil there for not only decades, hundreds of years, and really the research now shows thousands of years. And so the soil, you're improving the soil when you get enough charcoal in that soil. You're improving the soil for thousands of years. And that's the great discovery of biochar. Now, do I take like the little encapsulated, like I have my own, where's my charcoal at? I take edible charcoal. How do I do that? Jeez, it's somewhere under. I had it this morning. Maybe in here. No. Anyway, it'll suddenly show up. But there it is. Hold on 1 second. Let me get it. Okay. So do I take like my charcoal like this, which is like an edible charcoal, which is an activated charcoal? Do I take that and use that in the soil? No, because it's too small granulated. I want the rice size granulation so that it's like a vermiculite. It pushes everything open. So it allows oxygen to penetrate in on those roots.
That's awesome. It's almost like I've heard people talk about it as like a coral reef for all of the little critters and microorganisms to play and collect in there.
Well said.
Yeah, I can't claim that one, but I dig the reference. So you're a busy guy. You've been talking about a couple different farms, different projects. We'll talk about your tree project a little bit later because I want to ask you some questions and how people can get involved in that. You're a busy guy, and so you still find at least a little time to get outside. So, what would you think is possible for somebody with a busy schedule in terms of gardening?
Okay, great. Now you can see that I'm not like my arms, right? I'm not I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm a guy who carries sacks of soil and plants. And so that's my workout actually. And so, look, I'm not going to get like the muscle tone of, doing 50 reps of curls or something like that. So you're going to have to swap something out, which means that, hey, your hour workout at the gym, hey, swap that out with your 2 hours in the garden. And there's things that will happen in the garden, like squatting completely down. That's really important for you. Lifting sacks of soil and carrying them across, or lifting trees and putting them in the ground, or whatever. It's a different kind of workout. It's a more natural kind of workout. Now, one of the things I like to say is I like gyms and I love yoga classes whenever I can get to them. And recently there hasn't been much opportunity for that, but I still squeeze them in whenever I can. But that only prepares you for nature. That only prepares you for nature. So it's not the other way around. So this, what we're really doing with the gym is preparing ourselves for our interactions with the earth, including gardening, including planting trees, including digging holes. Digging holes on my farms has always been the thing. Like, I will always rouse my guys up and be like, okay, dude, we're digging 15 holes today. And everybody hates the whole digging day because in certain ecosystems, in Hawaii, for example, it's a little rough because you're digging into clay and rocks and it's just rough to get an actual hole dug. But that's such an important workout. That's the workout.
That's amazing. And while we're there, let's talk trees a little bit, because that is your sweet spot. And I think a lot of people in the Superfood Garden Summit, they have a little bit of experience with growing vegetables and herbs and those sorts of things, but they have less experience with trees. So can you give us a couple of hints for what makes a successful tree planting?
This is such a great question. One of the most important things about a successful tree is making the hole big enough. And then making sure you've kind of fortified it with enough nutrients and fertilizers that are appropriate. For example, you know, I'm in the superfood world, so I would take all my old superfoods, things that have expired, stuff that got stuck in the back of the cupboard. You know, I'm like, suddenly this spirulina is 3 years old, it's gone. And that goes into that mix. That's the fertilizer for that soil, for that tree. So I don't dig a hole that's just the size. Let's say I grew a tree in a pot and it's just a certain size. Let's say it's a, I don't know, 1 gallon pot. I'm going to dig a hole that's probably going to be 4 gallons in size or more, maybe 5 gallons. I put charcoal at the bottom of that always, because that's the negative ballast. That's the negative charge you want. You want the negative charge at the bottom. So the earth's negatively charged, the charcoal is extremely negatively charged. That's the pop that creates the growth. And then I'll put all kinds of great soils in there, and I'll go around, you know, as you get a sense for building soils, like I'll go around my property and be like, oh, there's really good soil right there that got washed down by the rain and it's really finely granulated. It's really perfect for what I want. So I'll get that. Then I'll throw that in the mix. Then I'll be walking around. I'll be at the beach or something, and I'll be like, oh, there's a really interesting soil that's developed right at the edge of the beach. It's got a little bit of beach sand in it, but it's got other things in it. And I'll throw that into a bucket and bring that home. And, oh, I'm on the beach and walking, and suddenly there's like, you know, shells of crabs and stuff. And I'll be like, I want that for my farm for sure. Crab shells, any kind of shells of lobsters, crabs, that kind of stuff is amazing for gardening. I'll get that and I'll take that back with me. I'll take pieces of coral back. And when you put that all together, you start to build a soil up. And then I build that soil, including all of my composted soil from my decayed food scraps. And I mix that all together. And then when I get to the tree, so I got the 1 gallon tree, I've got a 4 gallon hole. And suddenly I got 4 gallons worth of soil. So I can pop that in there, and then I can mound it up too. So it's not just that the soil that, you know, I'm not just putting it into the earth. I'm kind of mounding it up so that the richness attracts what is really the best fertilizer, which is the crustaceans in the soil, the roly-polies, and all the other little insects that come along, the ants and things, that will spread around those nutrients, the earthworms that come to spread around those nutrients and really make the whole thing pop. So that's the idea of planting a healthy tree.
Amazing. And what I love about what you just shared is a lot of people, when they get started gardening, the first thing they do is they go to a store to find out, like, where can I get a bag of soil? Where can I get a bag of compost? And not all of us have access to everything that you just said. However, we have access to a lot more than we realize if we kind of walk around the neighborhood and see what's available. And I love that you said what's available, put it in the hole, and even your cabinet, the things that may have gone bad. I love the idea of putting in your spirulina that's, you know, a little bit too old, right? So that's resourcefulness to me. And can we talk about that for a minute? Because that to me feels like the heart of gardening is this feeling of being resourceful and this feeling of giving back. Can you talk a little bit more about your philosophy of gardening around that?
One of the things that I like to do is whenever I get to my mom's house, I you know, she doesn't have a sense of like, hey, when you cut all these branches off these trees and you trim everything and then you take that material and you ship it off somewhere else, you're removing nutrients from the soil that are not replaced. And so I have to go in there and I have to be resourceful, and I have to kind of look around and be like, okay, she's got all these old supplements in her little supplement cabinet. They're in the back, and I know they've been there for years. So I will literally pull those out, multivitamins, for example, and I'll go around and I'll impregnate them into the soil all over the whole yard, every tree, everything. I'll go out there and I'll put 1,000 supplements, like little, you know, capsules and things she got at Costco that she's never going to eat. It's, you know, it's going to be there forever. And then that's what I use there as a fertilizer. That's an amazing fertilizer, by the way. Just multivitamins, like the old hard multivitamins, great fertilizer. And so we have to understand that trees are really resourceful themselves. And if you give them an inch, they're going to take it a mile. They can take little amounts and take it far. And another thing that I like to do is just when I'm driving around, like in my truck right now, I've got buckets and I've got a shovel. And if I'm driving around and I look over and I'm like, oh, that's silt over there from that river. That looks like really good stuff that my tobaccos, I'm a tobacco farmer. That's a whole story. I grow all types of tobaccos, by the way, and mostly the flowering tobaccos, which is not a smoking and it's not for anything except for just flowers. That's flowering nicotianas, everybody. Those are wonderful. You want to attract the hummingbirds. Oh, they love those. You want to be able to walk out of your house at night and have all those wafting scents come in. Flowering nicotianas. And they like a silty loam. They like what's growing, like what gets pushed up on the side of a river after a flood or something. And so I'll just go out down there with a shovel and just fill up a couple buckets of that, throw it in the back of the truck, and then that goes into my mix. So there's always stuff around you wherever you are. And it's really cool to know your ecosystem. I was originally from San Diego. And so down in Mission Gorge, which is where the mission was, the original place where the whole California was started by the Jesuits. That Mission Gorge is where they had broken into a bunch of rock to create gravel, to create roads and everything. And I used to just go down there and be like, hey, I'm doing experiments on tomatoes. Can I just get a bucket full of like rock dust? And they'd be like, yeah, of course. They call it crusher dust. And they'd be like, a bucket, who cares? I mean, they're producing tow trucks full of stuff, or dump trucks. And so I would just get a bucket of that and then spread that around and mix that into my soils. I put in, just on one farm, easily 35 different types of local rock dusts from local quarries. I drive around to quarries. Eventually I'm driving around to quarries, and eventually I get to know the quarry owner. And then I'm like, hey, we're doing this and this and that with our farm. Is that cool if we come in? And they're like, yeah, sure, of course. We don't care. Because they're dealing with dump trucks, massive amounts, for roads and stuff. But if you mix a little bit of that rock dust, that's where your minerals are coming from. Another thing I use is salt. You think salt, that's no good for plants. Oh, you got that one way wrong. Now, you aren't going to put a big block of salt on your plant. But if you mix it into soils and sprinkle it in, you are doing an amazing service for your land, because nature's always trying to get salts, especially if you're away from the ocean. Certain plants that are high mineral intake, like cacao trees and tobacco, they want everything. They're the kings. They want, give me everything you got. I want every single nutrient there is. There's certain plants that are like that. Salt is really good for them. So I will actually take a little bit of salt and water. That's resourceful right there. And just put that. And when I say salt, I'm not talking about table salt. I'm talking about sea salts or rock salts or Himalayan salts or things of that nature. Real salt that comes from the earth. And I'll mix that in. So, and I could go on and on with that. I mean, there's I'll tell you what's really good for plants too, and really good for trees, and really good as a fertilizer: dead leaves. Mm-hmm. Dead leaves are they're perfect, actually. It's a perfect fertilizer.
Yeah. They're always just breaking down and going back into the soil. So here's another thing. You mentioned flowering nicotina. Is that the word? I don't know if I got it right.
The genus is Nicotiana. That's the genus of all the tobaccos, which there are dozens and dozens of tobaccos. And the flowering nicotianas are by gardeners like myself are well loved. If you know what they are absolutely wonderful, because they attract very unique creatures. Like they attract the moths, they attract hummingbirds, they flower right at the end of the day and at night. It's just awesome.
Yeah. And the reason why I wanted to come back around to that was that lit up your whole being. Like you just lit up about the wonder that plant has brought into your life. And that's really why we garden. So I'm curious, what are some of your favorite plants and why?
Oh, great. Okay. Well, the tobaccos are by far my favorite class of plants in the world. And I go from all the way the tree tobaccos. If you're in the jungles of South America, like you're at Machu Picchu, for example, and you look around at the trees that are around you, most of those trees are actually tree tobaccos. They're actually nicotianas that have turned into trees. But that whole group, the tobaccos, is just, I could go on and on about it. That's a favorite. And the flowering nicotianas are my personal favorite of those. What else do I like farming? I'm an absolute fan of cacao trees. I have over 300 cacao trees that I planted on one of my farms, 28 different genetic varieties, probably the most diverse cacao collection in Hawaii. And I've got the wild cacaos of Jamaica. I've got the best cacaos of Honduras, so I mean, I'm talking real, like you break these things open, you smell it, and it's like you're in a candy factory. I mean, you can't believe what cacao is, especially the really good cultivars. So that's a big one for me. And I grew up as a grafter, in the sense that we grew up with grafted avocado trees and grafted citrus trees, which means that you take a rootstock of one type of really tough and hardy avocado, for example, and you graft on a Hass avocado, and then it produces always the same type of avocados. So I grew up with that, and every now and then I'll do that with my cacao trees. I'll put, I have some cacao trees that have 4 different ones on at once, so there are 4 different varieties on one tree. I do that for fun, but just for everybody to know, what really lights me up is seedling avocados and seedling trees that breed true to the seed, because that Hass avocado that comes from a grafted tree does not breed another Hass avocado. It breeds something else, and it'll throw back its genetics. But I like to breed true to seed. So the avocados that I grow today, that's, by the way, my nickname is avocado. I've been growing avocados since 1978, as I mentioned. They're all seedlings, which mean they breed true to seed. And this is stuff where the seed is this big, the avocado is this big. You can slice right through the avocado and cut slabs out, like a cucumber, right? But the thing is that big, right? These are the great Guatemalan highland varieties of avocados, which eventually I landed on as being my personal favorite. They're more globe shaped rather than the pear shape, and they're just awesome. So that lights me up. Growing avocado trees absolutely lights me up, and cacao and noni. I'm a big noni farmer. In Hawaii, we're on a natural area that had a high amount of noni trees. So noni is very high on my list, and I've seen amazing things. I've seen a noni tree that when I first got that farm about 17 years ago, they had cut down a bunch of noni trees on the side of the house, and they had been contaminated. Basically, the fungus had gotten into them, and usually that ends the tree, that kills the tree. Not a noni tree. The noni tree fought off the medicinal mushroom, the tree mushroom, pushed it off and regrew. I've never seen that any tree in my life. Just unbelievable stuff like that. That's how powerful noni is. And it goes.
So yeah.
They're so resilient.
Really quickly, for people who aren't familiar with the noni tree, what is that exactly?
Noni fruit is like the birch of the north. It is the most medicinal tree of the tropics. The root is medicinal. The leaves are medicinal. You can eat the leaves. You can eat the flowers. You can eat the fruit. The fruit tastes awful. It tastes like eating an old shoe, but it's really the best thing for you. You can. What we do is we just take the noni fruits, we throw them in these big glass containers, and we let them kind of rot into a liquid, and then you pour that liquid off, and you add that to like a citrus drink in the morning, like a kind of a fruit juice, an orange juice or grapefruit juice in the morning. And it's because it's very citrus-like. Noni is very citrus-like in its energy, but it doesn't have the flavor of citrus. So when you add them together, it's a really good combination. And we drink that almost every morning.
Amazing. So now I'm infatuated with these avocado trees, and I want to come visit. And I think for a lot of people, it's maybe new information. Apple trees are the same way, that the apples that you see in the store are oftentimes grafted on. They're not true to seed. If you were to take your apple and throw your seeds out, you'd get like 5 different types of apple trees. So tell us a little bit more about the perfect conditions for an avocado tree, or your secret sauce to growing these specific avocado trees. We have a sense of the soil being really important. We have a sense of that. The life cycle of the avocado tree, how long does it take to grow? And are you doing anything specific in that life cycle?
Great. So avocado trees, so they grow basically from a zone, like some avocado trees can handle a zone 8, which means that there can be a freeze or even can be snow. There's I grow Joey avocados and Poncho avocados here in Texas that can survive freezes. And that's rare though. Most avocados can't. So they have to go from that. They grow from say southern Texas all the way down into the tropics. And really the best ones, the Guatemalan highland varieties, the ones that grow in the high altitude, that are the big ones that are, have the small seed. Those are really the best ever by far. What avocados like is their feet in the water, their leaves in the sun. Right. So they can handle intense drought as long as they got somewhere where they can reach down to a stream or underground thing or something. So generally let's say you're in the deserts of Mexico, you could grow avocados in the deserts of Mexico as long as they're in a little ravine where water comes down whenever it rains and where there's an underground amount of water that they can get at. And you'll see that Mexicans do that. I grew up on the Mexican border. So we grew Mexican style avocados with Mexican, so we really got that download. Avocados also they can be a pioneer. That's one thing that's really incredible about the avocado tree is it can turn a desert into a jungle. It's the pioneer. It stands out in front. The avocado to me is really like the most incredible pioneer tree of all because it produces so much fat, so much food, being a pioneer species. Most pioneer species are like nitrogen fixers, like Mucuna, or there'll be nitrogen fixing, trees, or things like what's moringa is kind of like one of those pioneers. It can be on the edge from the forest to when you go into farmland or grassland. That's a really interesting niche, by the way. What grows on that barrier, that the change from one to the other, and avocados are one of those things. And so the avocado kind of paves the way, especially if you're growing in the tropics, for cacao, because it's producing an enormous amount of biomass that then drops down. The leaves drop down, all that fruit drops down and enriches that soil. All of a sudden the cacao trees, which is a nut trees like get rich, they want lots of goodies in the soil. They come in there, you're like, that can grow here, this is good, let's do this. And so that's another thing to consider, is that it can pioneer the way for things that can be grown underneath it. And it will improve your soil. I mean, avocados can improve your soil almost better than anything, because just the leaf mass alone is incredible what that does.
That's awesome. And I think for some people, they're thinking about short term more than long term sometimes, because they're like, what can I plant this year to eat this year? And an avocado tree is something that you're going to plant and you're going to enjoy later, and future generations are going to enjoy later. But I like that you're saying you can actually grow things underneath it in the meantime, which is interesting.
Yes.
People are going to be asking these questions now about avocado trees. So I just feel like I have to ask them, which is, could you grow one indoors if you wanted to, because you just loved it so much? Is that a possibility? And then also,
yes.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, you could grow avocado trees. If you're in a cold climate and you want an avocado tree in your house, absolutely, you can take a seed, put it in a pot and grow it and grow an indoor tree. Now, will it be a producer of fruit? Very unlikely that's ever going to fruit for you, but it's a wonderful house plant and very easy to deal with. And cacao also is like that, by the way. Cacao is a very wonderful house plant and easy to deal with, because cacao just needs that little bit of sun, that direct sunlight through the window every now and then, maybe 2 or 3 hours a day. Generally, cacao grows in the shade, and generally it likes no wind. So in a house indoors, as long as it doesn't get too cold in that house, it's as happy as can be. And I've seen many wonderful cacao trees growing indoors, even that fruited. Yeah, so you can actually fruit cacao or the chocolate tree indoors, but not really avocados, because avocados have a more complex flowering arrangement. You asked, by the way, before about how long it takes an avocado tree to produce. If you get a grafted tree from a nursery, and it's, say, a 2-year-old grafted tree, it might produce fruit that first year for you. And then from then on. If you get an ungrafted tree or a seedling, what I do, it's going to be about 6 years. In the tropics. The further you go north, it takes longer, because it takes longer for the tree to mature. So growing avocado trees in San Diego all those years from seed, it could sometimes take 10 years or longer for the tree to find. Sometimes you had to shock the tree, like really trim it back, or like really shock it to get into flowering mode, because it'd been 12 years. And you're like, dude, like, come on, this is taking too long here. And, you do something crazy to shock it, and, maybe cut the top of it off or something like that. And then that would stimulate it to be like, oh, my time is running out, I better fruit.
What's amazing is I think about the people who maybe are benefiting from your trees, and things that you left behind that people are enjoying, and you might not even know all of them, right? Like there might be some surprise and delight around what you left behind that you don't even know, which is really cool. I did want to talk a little bit more about cacao. So chocolate is one of those things that people love, and it's a superfood, but what's the difference between chocolate and cacao and the health benefits of those things for people?
Okay, I often will say that the cacao tree, cacao, C-A-C-A-O, is the original word in the original Mayan enunciation. And we know that because the Mayan alphabet and the Mayan spelling is enunciated. So cacao is basically two letters in the Mayan alphabet. And it's not cocoa, C-O-C-O-A. That was some British thing that they totally screwed up everything with their languaging. But anyway, cacao is the original word. It's one of the oldest words in use in all language. It's been in use we believe, for over 5,000 years, and some people believe even 10,000 years. That's been the name. So it's one of the oldest words in use in any language. And another thing that's really interesting is that we think about cacao, and we're like, okay, that's somehow related to chocolate, but what is the relationship? So the relationship is that the cacao tree produces a nut. It's the most widely eaten nut in the whole world. 100 times more people eat cacao than eat walnuts. Or almonds, it's not even comparable. But then you think, well, then what's a chocolate bar? So what they've done is they basically turned the nut into a nut butter. So they take the nuts and they grind them down. Now in the old days, they did it on stone. So you take what do they call it? They called it I want to say matate, but that's not the right word. Anyway, you'd have an angled piece of lava stone, and you'd have a pestle, and you'd be bang, 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 you bang it, bang, you crush the cacao beans, and then underneath that angled piece of stone would be a fire. So you just keep crushing it, add things to it, keep crushing it. People could do this in 5 minutes back in the old days. Even still in Mexico, people can still do this real fast. And suddenly you have a ground up kind of chocolate drink, and then they take all that, throw it into a hot water, and then you with a molinillo do a hand blender. The Mexicans invented the blender. It's called a molinillo, and they go like this, and then they whip you up a drink, and there would be. And almost all chocolate cacao drinks were drinks up until the chocolate bar was invented in 1828 in Massachusetts, where they realized that, like, hey, if we grind the stuff down on stone, like the way you'd grind down an olives, or for example, to get olive oil or that kind of a thing, if we grind this stuff down, then we can pour it into a mold, and it's because it's cold enough up here, it will solidify, and that creates a shape. Then they went, wait, we're just taking these nuts and we're grinding them down, because they're basically squishing the oils out for 16 hours, and then you pour it over here into a mold, it will solidify into a mold. That's the first chocolate bar. And then people realized, wait, we could add things to it, like herbs and sugar, vanilla and sugar, for example, and the chocolate bar was born. That's where the chocolate bar came from.
Amazing. And so I think there's a lot of people who have a little bit of chocolate every day. I mean, this is something that so many people are using, right?
I'm one of them.
Yeah, for sure. And so tell us other ways that cacao is used for health benefits, and how do people consume cacao other than chocolate bars?
The main way that people consume cacao, it's the way you do it in the jungle is, and this was really interesting when I got into the whole legend and lore of how people consume cacao, is they just open the fruit and they eat the fruit pulp off the nuts. We say cacao beans. It's not a bean, it's a nut. It's a botanical nut. It's like a cashew or an almond. Anyway, there's a fruit pulp around it. And so that women and children in all indigenous tribes all through the Americas would basically consume it as a fruit, and then they'd spit out the seed and then dry the seed. So it was fermented by human saliva as it dried. And so that was the original fermentation. And then the men would come along, take all the dry beans and then crush them up into drinks. That was traditionally how it was done. Generally, you would eat a bean here and there, but mostly the beans were not eaten. They were either the pulp was consumed, the beans were crushed and then taken as a drink, or the beans were used for other things. They were given as magical rights. They were dowries that were exchanges of cacao beans. The cacao bean itself was money. And the money was the main source of currency in Central America for 1,000 years or longer. It could be 5,000 years, it could be 10,000 years, because it's so intrinsically valuable, because it has a little skin over itself too. So you have the pulp that's around it, and then the women would, suck that off, and with children, they would suck that pulp off because it's delicious. It's one of the most amazing things ever. And then you would dry that bean, but that bean still has another skin on it. So it protects what's inside. So once that's dried, you could pass that around. It would not decay. And also people's hands, it has a skin. So somebody pass you money, you could peel it and eat it. Isn't that the most amazing thing ever? And we're going back, by the way, in the future, because the way this human civilization is very unstable, as we know, and we could be thrust back to the Stone Age tomorrow, or 10 years from now, or 5,000 years from now, or whenever. It's going to happen at some point. It will go back to the things that have intrinsic value, and cacao as money has intrinsic value. It's a food, it's a medicine, and it's a currency. It's everything all there at once.
And people love it so much, which makes it even more valuable. Yeah. Let's talk. So what's interesting is all of this is related to trees. I mean, we've been talking about avocado trees and cacao trees and citrus trees and all these different trees that you've been working with over the years. And so you are the founder and president of a nonprofit called the Fruit Tree Planting Foundation, which is ftpf.org. And it's got a mission to plant 18 billion fruit and medicinal trees on Earth. And my question is, why 18 billion?
thank you for that question. And years ago, when I was first doing research on how many trees we actually needed to plant on Earth to really reverse the amount of dust coming out of brakes, the amount of exhaust coming out of vehicles, the amount of oil being burned into the atmosphere, it was 18 billion. Since then, we found out it was more like 300 or 400 billion trees needed to be planted. So we underestimated it a bit. But I thought, well, that's a really good goal, and it's a big goal, and it's a big, hairy, audacious goal, as the old writers used to state. So it gets us thinking, how do we get to that level? Now, in 19 years, since 2002, since I founded Fruit Tree Planting Foundation, we've planted over 1 million trees all over the world. Fruit, nut, and medicinal trees, including lots of cacao trees all over the tropics, all over El Salvador. We plant all over the world, all over the United States, all over Mexico, all over Brazil, everywhere, Iceland, Europe, everywhere. We've been on, I don't even know how many countries, probably 30 at least, maybe more. And they're always in places like orphanages or cities where they need food for homeless people, or it just, they're always functional in some way. We've been planting in Uganda, and there's been this kind of rivalry between one state and another. And so they decided to plant a peace orchard between the two states, that we planted up mango trees right along that, and other trees, but mostly mangoes across that border. And so we've had tremendous successes, lots of events with Native Americans, and we've done lots of planting with Native Americans. We restored the 5,000 trees. Kit Carson and his cronies literally destroyed 5,000 peach trees of the Hopi. We restored them. So we replanted 5,000 trees for them. And that's the kind of thing that we like to do, is just get out there and just get food forests going. And this is the thing too that happens, is that when you get enough of a certain type of tree, like apples in the right environment, or figs in the right environment, or the right thing, pomegranates in the right environment, they'll go naturally. They'll survive without you. And that's been always the ethic of FTPF, is that we plant things so they can survive even if no human ever took care of them ever again.
That's awesome.
So they can become food forests for the future.
That's awesome. And the thing that I think is interesting here is that a lot of times when people are thinking about starting a garden, they start and they plant a couple things and they get excited about what they can eat out of their garden, and they're enthralled with this process. But over time, what happens is they start to get involved in the community of gardening. And here at the Superfood Garden Summit, usually we have 167 countries show up, and they're always looking for, what can I do in my country? And here's an interesting question, is who all wants to grow some fruit trees, and who all wants to contribute to this project? And so I think it's an amazing opportunity for people wherever you are to get involved. And is there a way for people to specifically get involved?
Yes, absolutely. We take volunteers, and we take them all over the world, and we do projects where we'll literally, like, if you want to volunteer, you're going to get on a plane with us and go to Uganda or Brazil, or you'll go from the West Coast to the East Coast, or East Coast to the West Coast. And so that's ftpf.org. We take donations. Please donate $1. We have our ratio of the actual money that goes in and how that actually translates over to what actually goes in the ground is over 90%. It's one of the highest of any nonprofit in America. So that we actually, of every dollar, more than 90% of that dollar, or more than 90 cents of that dollar, actually goes into trees. Our admin cost is almost non-existent. And the reason why we do that is because I only want people running that operation who absolutely are committed to trees. I mean, I'm committed. Jem, who runs the organization, is committed. All our crew that helps us out, we're all committed. We actually, if that's all you're doing is just planting trees every day, you don't need money. You don't need anything else. It's the most fulfilling thing ever. It really is. And it gets everybody together. Like, we could disagree on politics. We could disagree on this or that or the other thing or anything. But as soon as we're planting trees together, we're all agreeing. And that's an amazing thing. And that's what I love about it so much, is like, we can get together with this person's on that political side, no problem. We could come over, let's plant a tree together. This person's on the other political thing, let's come over, let's plant a tree together. You're of this religion, no problem, come over here, let's plant a tree. You got this religious belief, come over here, plant a tree. It's wonderful like that.
And it will be a symbol for generations to come, because these are trees that you're picking because they can grow there without human help. And I just want to highlight this idea of the mango trees that are a borderline now, which, imagine a space that used to be one of conflict, which is now about coming together and picking food. That's a really powerful thing that you did there for those people. And I can just imagine how many lives this is changing. So it's really exciting. I have a question for you, which is, we've been talking about trees, we've been talking about gardening, we've been talking about how to get involved with making the earth a better place. And all of this starts with our own health, right? Like without starting here and making sure that we feel great, we can't go out and do good things for the world necessarily. So my question is, what do you wish that more people were asking about health and longevity? Sorry about that. What do you wish more people were asking about health and longevity, both for ourselves and for the planet?
Well, I just wish people would be more oriented towards nature. And this kind of being here on the summit and being oriented towards planting gets you oriented towards nature as the solution. So this idea that these dudes in lab coats in some operation over here, you know, with some other dudes over in lab coats with some operation over here are going to actually solve some major problem for humanity's health is really absurd. And that's what we're dealing with right now. In fact, what ends up happening is the whole thing gets weaponized and then gets turned into a massive money scandal, right? That's really, you know, a greed and money and control scandal. So when you get oriented towards nature, you're not only orienting towards your own food, but you're also getting back to the actual roots of medicine, right? And that system that's being called medicine today really has nothing to do with medicine. I know I grew up with two medical doctors as my mom and dad. I grew up in doctors' offices. I went to medical trade shows as a kid. I've been in it my whole life. And I can tell you that that system has nothing to do with health. It's all about greed, control, bad theories, bad ideas, bad medicines, medicines that actually hurt people. We have all the evidence of everything I just said. And if you really want medicine, look at Mediterranean diet. Look at what's been going on in Greece all along. Look at the longevity of the great peoples of Okinawa all along. And just, you see that there's a connection with the foods, the superfoods, the super herbs, the farming, the environment, the swimming, the climbing, the walking. That's what is creating health. That's what protects you from respiratory whatever. That, right? It's like at this, I'm never, just so everybody knows, I've been at this so long and I had great teachers. There's no chance I'm getting a cough, cold, flu, virus, any of that ever again. It's impossible, because now that's a whole nother lecture of how we do that. And that is a process. It's not like, you know, there's a gal who's in one of my groups right now, and she lost 70 pounds and she's going through an incredible thing right now. And she's just having a wonderful year. She's had a great year for her own health, but she's getting her high blood pressure still there. So she's getting a little bit like, you know, I want to be healed tomorrow because she's gone so far already. But it takes all your life to get into these troubles like high blood pressure and other things like that. So you just, a little bit of patience, take a minute. It's not going to be all healed up in a year. But in 3 years, I'd say it's going to be all healed up. And then because it reverses order, right? Of all the symptoms, as you heal yourself, they reverse order and they go backwards, and you go back to where you were when you were a kid. This is what real health is all about, right? It's just amazing what it really is compared to what the system, and we all know the system now is so broken. It's at its end.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm so grateful that you wrap that up that way, because gardening is very similar. I'm thinking about the people who are just getting started gardening, and they want to do it all right now. You know, they want it all to happen right now. So maybe some last words for our audience, your advice for those people who maybe are feeling a little overwhelmed at everything they have to do in their garden and they want it to all happen right away. Just a couple of last words for our audience.
Okay, I got really into gardening. I'm great with trees, as I've been talking about, but I'm really, like, when it comes to gardening, I was never that guy. It's like, I'm going to plant carrots in this row and then kale in that row, and then it's going to be beets in that row. I'm not that guy. And so just if you're like going, I'm not going to be able to plant carrots in this row, and don't worry about it. You don't have to do that. I'm a chaos gardener. So I will take a lot of my, like what's growing out of my compost. Sometimes I'll just dig the whole thing out like a squash. I got a great squash coming out of compost. I dig the whole thing out. I put it in the garden. I'll transplant it over. A lot of times, like the other day, I just sprinkled a bunch of tobacco seeds in all my avocados that are going, I have a bunch of avocado trees that are going into the ground. And I just put the seeds in the top of the pots, because they might sprout up. They might find up, because tobacco's like that. It kind of likes to come up where it wants to. And so you can be a chaos gardener. That's okay. It doesn't have to be in rows. You can take things that are popping out of your compost pit and transplant them. You can grow things. If you're planting avocado trees, you can plant things in there with like tomatoes. And when you put the whole thing in the ground, you might have tomatoes running around your avocado trees. Great. You don't have to do everything by the book. You can do things in a way that's inventive and creative, and use your intuition. One of my favorite discoveries in my life, and it's one of my gifts that I've given to permaculture, is I spent a good year or two trying to figure out from the Tahitians and the Hawaiians how to grow vanilla. How they do it, because the Tahitian vanilla is very famous. And they're like, oh, okay, we take our metal stake, we put it in the ground, and put the coconuts, we basically push them through until they stack up on top of each other. Then we wrap the coconut, or then we wrap the vanilla vine around the coconuts. And that's how and I was like, no way. Sorry, that doesn't make sense to me. Here's what makes sense to me. Vanilla and cacao, chocolate and vanilla, they're together. Vanilla is an orchid. It's a vine orchid. So I was like, why don't I just put the orchid on the cacao tree and see what happens? That is the most amazing thing of all time. And I just want to digress on this just so people get a feeling for this. This is the greatest thing of all time. The cacao tree is not really a tree. It's more of a bush. It doesn't grow 100 feet. Maximum, it'll grow 20 feet. And so what happens is that when you get the cacaos in under the understory, say under the avocado trees, because avocados will grow big. So you have the avocados up top, then you have the cacaos there, and then I put the vanillas in the cacaos. Then the vanillas jump from one cacao to the other, and they go from this to the other. So the whole jungle, as you walk through the trails, you're surrounded in vanilla vines that are coming from one cacao tree to another.
Amazing.
It's beyond belief. The magic of that is beyond belief. I'm missing that actually, because I haven't been to my farm in Hawaii in some months. So I'm going back soon, but that's the one thing I miss, is walking through, because we created that over, it's been 17 years that we created that environment. So now the vanilla, we know where it's vigorous and where the cacaos are vigorous and where it likes to be. And it's just going.
That's incredible. And I love the idea of chaos gardening. I love the idea of using your intuition and your creative spirit, because that's what nature is. When you get to interact with it that way, you are nature. You're working with it. It's really powerful. So I know that you have a free gift for our audience as well. It's called The Power of Intention. And the website is thebestdayever.com/the-power-of-intention. So I would love to know, what will people find when they go see this, The Power of Intention?
We keep it short and sweet and punchy. And I spent a lifetime studying success books, and The Power of Intention is really the beginning of it all. And I love, what Wayne Dyer did all those years ago. I just got I got a message from one of his daughters, actually 2 of his daughters recently. I need to respond to that. You just reminded me of that. And it's just a wonderful thing. It's like when you have an intention, that's your goal. Mm-hmm. And without a goal, you can't get to where you're going. How do you know where you're going unless you have an intention to get there? And so this is the beginning. This is Carlos Castaneda had a great piece on this where he talked about, as soon as your intention is set, it creates a cord that connects you. And this is the type of stuff in the Power of Intention little series, and it's bite size. So it keeps it real punchy and real fun and real exciting. So that's our free gift for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I'm sure that's going to help a lot of people. It's all about the imagination, and that intention just sets us right on the right track. So I thank you so much. This conversation is going to inspire so many people. I'm sure that a lot of people are going to be thinking about growing avocado trees and cacao trees, and also just having a new relationship to their garden, that maybe it's more about chaos and more about intuition and less about rows. And so I think you've inspired a lot of people. I'm really grateful for everything you shared here today and what you're doing for the earth with your tree project.
Right on. Thank you so much. And it's just it's a joy to garden. It's a joy to farm. And, we have an autistic girl here. She's in the other room right now. She's having a meltdown, but it's so fun. Whenever we get her out into nature, she just runs into nature. And this is the thing that you're doing, is you're creating an environment for kids like this. You're creating an environment for kids not like this, or kids who aren't autistic, that just, want to be in nature. You're creating their future. Right. So you're creating a fruit forest and the food forest and the gardens for their future. So if it wasn't for my uncle and his farm, I would never be farming like I am today. It would never have gotten to I would never be the avocado grower that I am today, because if it wasn't for my uncle. So remember that it's not only for you, it's a gift you're giving for that next generation.
Thank you so much, David.
Thanks.
If today's video helped, we'd love to invite you to something special. Every year, Grow Your Own Vegetables hosts the free Superfood Garden Summit, where dozens of gardening teachers share more videos just like the one you watched today, helping you grow healthier, more abundant food at home. Whether you join us live or watch the replay, Grab your free ticket at the link in the description below. Thank you for spending this time with us.